In the annals of time, riding social forces as they crest and crash onto the shores of history, some would-be heroes stumble but manage to recover their breath. Others are reduced to the flotsam and jetsam of nostalgia. These others are our subjects. They are the vanquished.
Hello and welcome to The Vanquished. Anders J. Lee here with Freddie G.
So happy to be here.
I had a deeper voice a moment ago. It got a little oh yeah, here it is. It's kind of hoarse, and I think I want to keep it this way. I'm going to do the Tom Waits thing and yell at the mirror so my voice is more sultry than it normally is. But I'm excited to announce we have a great guest on today's program, Krang T. Nelson. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for using my full name. I always appreciate the proper introduction.
Yeah, I mean, I just started going with my middle initial within the past year or so, and it definitely adds an air of respectability to
it. Does, and I will admit there was a time when I was trying to get some articles passed with I think Vice in the early days, and they were like, well, what do you want to go by? And I thought it sounded more serious if I went by KT Nelson. That could sound like the Krang was the thing that was fucking me up. When people heard Krang, they immediately didn't take me seriously. But if they heard KT Nelson, it's H.P. Lovecraft or whatever the fuck. And I gave up on that a while ago. Now it's just, I own it. It's Krang, baby.
Go for it. Well, it's a great name. It's you are a personality on Twitter, people are probably familiar with, and we're going to be talking about somebody who is not on Twitter, as far as I know, or at least is not actively tweeting. But if Twitter was around back in the day, in the 80s and 90s, I'm sure this guy would be very active. Patrick J. Buchanan, which I'm disappointed to learn we share a middle initial. He doesn't go by Patrick J. Buchanan very often, but he could if he wanted to. It's one of the J that really adds kind of it's not just any letter. It's like Donald J. Trump, Patrick J. Buchanan. It's slick in a certain way. But that is a name, obviously, a lot of millennials grew up hearing. I feel for me, I don't know how you guys feel, it's kind of like one of those ambient names you hear adults talking about when you're growing up. Patrick Buchanan or Pat Buchanan. What are your first memories? We'll start with Fred, of Patty Bukes.
Oh, he was scary, yeah. Pat, I was in Hebrew school. Yeah, he doesn't like Jews. Yeah, we were scared of Pat Buchanan. I'm still scared of him. Yeah, he's a scary figure. And he's still alive. Yeah, we were just talking about how he's still only the good die young, and Pat Buchanan is going to live till 90, just haunting us the prospect of a Buchanan presidency.
And what about you, Krang?
So I grew up in somewhat conservative circles, I would say, and so my first introduction to Pat Buchanan was this is just some guy. He was not presented to me as any sort of radical or something like that. And I was a child, and you grow up around this sort of politics of these are just guys. These are guys, in the same way that, I imagine any child views politicians. And then I started getting to an age where I started formulating my own opinions and things like that. And he just became this distillation of a lot of qualities that I found to be very unattractive in people I grew up around and people I didn't grow up around. Just the hatefulness and the way he treated people, even at a young age where I probably couldn't have told you what my politics were. I knew I didn't like that. I will also say, not to correct you, Anders, but he is on Twitter, it seems, but he stopped posting in 2022, so I can only assume he was protesting Elon's purchase of the site, and he's over
of course now. That must be no, I think he has one of those Pat Buchanan on Blue Sky. Yeah. I think he has one of those setups where it just everything he publishes on his website just goes to Twitter. But he would fit right in with some of these youngsters who are Catholic, many of them, and really anti-migrant and
He's like a
Trumpian.
proto-groiper.
Sure, yeah, he definitely the dudes who were supporting Pat Buchanan in the '90s were proto-groipers. Should say this is the Vanquished, of course. We talk about presidential losers and how they relate to today. And Pat Buchanan, of course, ran for president 3 times with varying degrees of success. Obviously, he did not become president, but there is an ongoing sort of debate about whether or not he was a precursor to Donald Trump. This is going on Twitter. I think it's like pretty safe to say yes. I wonder what you guys think. This is a pet peeve I have with historians is anyone who has studied a subject really well will find an objection to someone else making a comparison about like a modern figure and a historical one. And that's what you see with Pat Buchanan, where, it's quite up like trade, immigration, TV personality, Pat Buchanan, Donald Trump, but a lot of these historians feel the need to say, no, they're actually different in this way or that way. One of them being that Pat Buchanan never became president, which is that kind of narrows down who you're allowed to compare historically by at least 46 people. But what do you guys think about this controversy? Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, let me give you the argument. Yeah, there's just a few slogans that really hammer the point home why he is similar to Trump or the precursor. He has slogans like "Make us proud to be Americans again," "Make America first again," something Trump literally says, saving manufacturing jobs. He came up with "Build the Wall," and I looked into this, and no one had said "Build the Wall" before. There's Rodney King riots. And he decides not to blame it on the LAPD or the issue, the different communities there. He says it's because people are coming across the Mexican border, and we need to build a wall across the entire Mexican border to protect Los Angeles, which I don't think is even on the border. So he in a lot of ways the precursor to Trump. I mean, there's differences we'll get into, but yeah, a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is, obviously, always the best type of answer for Twitter, which is a nuanced one, which is that I don't think that Pat Buchanan, the person, was necessarily this like perfect, like proto-Trump, predecessor to Trump, whatever you want to frame it as, because I think they are very different men in the sense that, like, Pat Buchanan, for better or for worse, is a man who believes in something. He has a central core set of beliefs, and all of his opinions, for better or for worse, and I think in almost all cases for worse, lead back to that central kind of theme or that thesis that he has in his mind. Donald Trump doesn't believe in anything. Donald Trump was a Hillary Clinton supporter 8 years ago, like 12 years ago or whatever. Donald Trump really only believes in his own personal aggrandizement, and the fact that he has found a home within this group of what I consider to be people who are also tend to be somewhat narcissistic and selfish and things like that is less surprising. But I don't think he's driven by the same things that Pat Buchanan is driven. I think that forces coalesced around the Republican movement that are similar, but I don't think the men themselves are very much the same. I would say, like, the things that Pat Buchanan reminds me a lot more of a segment of Trump's base, and which is that like kind of groiper, racist, disaffected young man shit. But beyond that, I think it's a little bit more hazy. Having said, on that same note, though, I really don't even have a good understanding of who, like, the corollary for that would have been, or like, who were the disaffected young men in 1992? Like, what were you pissed off about?
Yeah.
You fucking go walk and get a job for $300,000 at Lycos? Like, what the fuck, man? Like, I get why young men are disaffected now, but like, they didn't have Andrew Tate or fucking tech jobs or any of this.
They did have Andrew Dice Clay, though, who was
yes.
And every era has an Andrew, I guess, who gets. But they just went to Madison Square Garden, and then that kind of fizzled out. I mean, obviously, society was very misogynistic, and you didn't. I mean, the fact that Andrew Dice Clay was selling out Madison Square Garden just goes to show what the culture was like back then. But they were threatened by Bill Clinton of all people, and this is really what it came down to for Buchanan was a culture, as we'll get to, is culture, and he saw a threat from really the Clintons as a couple to America's way of life. But there's a controversy that comes back quite often with Pat Buchanan, and that is the charge of anti-Semitism, obviously an accusation that gets thrown around a lot today. For sometimes spurious reasons, often spurious reasons, often not. But our resident person of the Jewish, if not faith, ethnicity, Freddie G, what do you say on the is Pat Buchanan an anti-Semite question?
I say yes, yeah, and that is the difference with Trump. Trump is not. Trump is not. Trump is much more pro-Jewish than Pat Buchanan is. Pat is a lot more anti-rich than Trump. And overall, Pat is Pat definitely likes Hitler a little too much. Trump likes Hitler and Trump likes authoritarians, but he doesn't favor Hitler over the other ones. When Pat will throw out quotes to be pro Hitler.
Yeah, I think if like David Duke, like in the way that David Duke like endorsed Buchanan like wouldn't back away from it or whatever. Like I think that if someone made it annoying for Trump. Like if David Duke now, or whoever the David Duke of now is, endorsed Trump, and I mean, I guess that kind of did happen, but he immediately distanced himself from it. He was like the little cat boy, what's his name, Nick Fuentes guy.
Oh yeah.
The little. Oh God! Yeah. But he like went to the White House, and then it became a problem for Trump that he had been there, and Trump immediately is like, I don't even know who the fuck this guy is. He came in for a dinner. Fuck him. Like Trump immediately backed away from him. Buchanan wouldn't back away from David Duke, and I think again that speaks to like those core principles, which is again Trump will totally take the help of an anti-Semite, not give a shit about it twice. But he doesn't believe in that to the point that he would like sacrifice his own personal capital or his own like political capital to defend his relationship with that person. Whereas like apparently Pat Robertson will.
Yeah. There's a quick on the Nick Fuentes point. There's an IMDb page for Nick Fuentes that the name of the production is just Happy Birthday, Pat Buchanan. And if you click on the link, that's like there's a sign with Nick Fuentes that has this big board, paleocons on one side, neocons on the other. Most of the reasons to oppose neocons is that they are Jewish. But Fred, you
answer the question.
Oh yeah, let me give you more. Yeah, sure. Let me give you more on the Pat anti-Semitism. Yeah, I was able to pull the quote up. He compares quote unquote Red China to Nazi Germany, arguing that Mao Zedong shared Hitler's genius for torturing his own people while teasing diplomatic and economic concessions out of the West. In passing, he referred to Hitler as an individual of great courage, a soldier's soldier in the Great War, a political organizer of the first rank, a leader steeped in the military history of Europe who possessed oratorical powers that could awe even those despising him.
Wow.
So I've never even heard someone try and say that Hitler was a soldier. Like that seems to be. I've never even heard like Nazis say that.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody thought that effete little man was a good soldier.
Right. The way I remember the consensus on his World War I service was that he like cowered in the corner while these other guys were, and then he created the stabbed in the back myth, and that's why Germany lost the war.
I do like that Hitler went blind. Hitler was blinded in World War I, and that's my favorite. Like, would you go back in time and kill Hitler? I'm not going to kill a baby. I'll kill blind Hitler in World War I. It's another blind guy getting shot in a war is no big deal.
Yeah, this is a controversial opinion. I will kill any historical figure. Whatever. They're already dead in my timeline, so I don't care.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. So
I don't believe in that butterfly effect stuff.
Okay, that's a bold take. The butterfly effect not being valid. So, Bill Clinton would have been elected no matter what, even without Buchanan and Ross Perot.
No, I mean, I think that I shouldn't have said I don't believe in the butterfly effect. I believe that the consequences of our minute actions are too vast for us to comprehend,
Right.
and so to pretend that we have some sort of control over it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So just do whatever.
In a way that can be reduced to a movie starring Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, just do whatever, man. Shit's gonna happen.
Yeah, I agree in a world where we don't have a time machine. But if you give me a time machine, I'm going to fuck shit up.
Yeah, there you go.
So then, so Pat did get defended with his anti-Semitism by some of his people in the media, even liberal media people. But then there's also stories of like his family would bully their Jewish neighbors back. Right. I think it was back in Virginia.
In D.C.
Unfortunately, in D.C.
He grew up in Northwest D.C. Yeah, which you have the story.
Oh, yeah. So he had the Bernsteins would live nearby, and the Buchanan boys would play football at the yard. I don't know why they'd be playing football at midnight, and they would tip over the Bernstein car and shout, "Get the Jews!" Yeah, so they were turning their football games into some kind of mini Kristallnacht, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And we just said, they did not like the Jews. So that is not great. So I think with him, and he is not even that pro-Israel. He says some good some stuff that I would agree with against Israel, but he is one of these guys where it doesn't count because I think he is also legit an anti-Semite.
It's also funny that I think with the modern day, I guess the question is, would the modern day incarnation of like, if were Pat Buchanan to exist in the Republican Party now, I feel like he would be very pro-Israel. It's an interesting thing. I don't know. It's hard to tell because of that paleo neocon kind of like line there.
Yeah,
I don't think he would have liked Yitzhak Rabin and the peace stuff, but now that they got their own Hitler, he might like that. You know, him and Netanyahu, I feel like they could hang.
He loves
they're both
the
guys kind of from the Northeast, yeah. So I think
likes
they could
the
hang.
ethno-state concept. He just wishes it was executed by a different group.
Yeah, or that the U.S. should have our hands clean of it. I mean, he is a very interesting figure, and very idiosyncratic, and seems there's not a lot of people like that. I want to say in the political sphere in the 80s and 90s, because the world is changing, globalization, and he is standing athwart history and saying no, which is, I guess, not uncommon in America. It is extremely uncommon for someone who grows up in Washington, D.C. That's kind of like the conundrum of Pat Buchanan is he is a coastal elite, but he has such a particular background where he's from a like highly Catholic part of DC in that time, and he sort of waxes nostalgic for Washington, the Washington of old, where he says, well, the city was like basically half white, half black. And he doesn't mention that they're segregated, but he's kind of like, yeah, wasn't it nice? You had the blacks over here and the whites here, and we were both in the same city, but we didn't hang out. And he also waxes nostalgic about not having to care about local politics. This was an interview I saw with him where he's like, when I was a kid in DC, we just focused on national politics. We didn't have to be bothered with self-government and electing the city council and mayor, which DC was not able to do until Pat Buchanan was an adult.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to get into his 1992 campaign. He ran, like you said, 3 times. I would say only one of them he had any real success, which is 96. But the 92 one, I think, is the most interesting. And I also, he's going to challenge George H.W. Bush as an incumbent. He's going to challenge him in the Republican primary. I don't know if there's been a serious primary challenger to an incumbent since, and maybe Buchanan as well. But he is willing to kind of call out his own party and the incumbent on why they're wrong. And it does remind me a lot of Bernie in 2016. I know he's running against Hillary, but he's willing to run against the Obama legacy. He does create a vibe in the party where they're willing to kind of move past that. So he does change the party. And if it's Buchanan, he runs in 92, and then 24 years later, a guy like him becomes president. So in 2040, maybe AOC will continue this tradition and become, and complete Bernie's 2016 run.
Could be. Well, a little bit about Pat pre-presidential campaigns. As we mentioned, he's from D.C. He grows up being really keenly interested in politics. I believe he is Nixon's caddy at some country club, and is from the very Catholic section of D.C., where he's openly says that Franco was very popular in his family. He was like a hero to the Buchanan boys. Francisco Franco was a brutal dictator.
Would have been a contemporary. Would have been actively dictatoring at the time.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah, they're like, which is so odd to just be openly saying that in America, where you have people like John McCain, who are Republicans, who are like, who still support the Republican in the Spanish Civil War sense cause. Like very marginal position to be pro Franco. Well, I guess in the grand scheme of things, maybe not. What's that, Fred?
A cool Franco fact is George Orwell literally took up arms in the Spanish Civil War against Franco. So if there's any leader that Orwell would describe as bad, it's Franco, because he took to the field for that one.
Yeah. But yeah, he worked for Nixon. He worked his way up and sort of charmed his way into being a speechwriter. He coined the term silent majority. He is good with these little, culture war, silent majority. And then becomes kind of like the Republican media guy. And he works for Reagan, and is, I believe, a communications director. And there is some disappointment with Reagan from conservative circles, but you have people like Buchanan in the White House, which he complains later. He's like, it was a very secular environment, the Reagan White House. And by the early 90s, you have him and kind of this circle of basically fascist and fascist adjacent ghouls who are sort of plotting something, because HW is significantly more, to me, not very significantly different from Reagan, but to people like Buchanan, that's a departure. The Republican Party is moving left. You have him talking about a new world order. He's a little less doctrinaire about social issues, quote unquote. That was stuff he didn't really care much about. Bush had a record of being like pro-choice, and then he has to change all that stuff. But when he becomes president, it's pretty apparent that this guy isn't really drinking the Kool-Aid in the same way they are. So they want somebody to really push the envelope. And they even say, the biggest vacuum in American politics is to the right of Ronald Reagan. So even Reagan didn't go far enough, and there's disappointment over things like Sandra Day O'Connor being nominated to the court. And so Pat Buchanan decides to take the plunge. He's also has been, we should mention, a commentator on CNN. He's on Crossfire. So yeah, and this kind of helps normalize him, because someone like him running for president would have, I think, been dismissed as much more of a kook, even somebody who was like had worked in politics. But because he was on a mainstream show, it wasn't like he was on CBN or something. He was on a down the line like establishment media organ, talking about issues and sharing his perspective, and he gets a following from that. But he also was able to kind of endear himself to other pundits, and so he's saying these terrible things and running on these god awful policies that are somewhat fascist, but his contemporaries, many of them Democrats, are like, well, he's not a fascist. Like, we disagree with him, but he's a good guy. He's just a little like crazy.
It's weird how that was like. This obviously was before my time, but I remember when I was a kid, I was like very young, and I watched The Daily Show, and Jon Stewart would bring on Mike Huckabee all the time.
Yeah,
him and Mike Huckabee were boys,
right?
And they would like talk a little bit about politics. Mostly they'd shoot the shit and have like Mike Huckabee play bass guitar or something like that.
Yep.
And looking back on it, because like I was like in elementary school at the time, it worked on me. I thought this is a nice man. You know, his politics are different, but he's a nice guy. And like, no, he's a piece of shit. And like, yeah, I should hate him. And this like joviality that like a lot of people in the news media, even like Jon Stewart, who I think would probably now say that he regrets being, you know, normalizing Huckabee to that degree. I think it was just the way things were for like most of the 20th century.
It's weird with Stewart. He even had Bill O'Reilly on like recently. Like Stewart is still kind of doing this. Bill O'Reilly's one of his most freaking guests. Like post all the accusations. I do it with Buchanan. He would even be on like network TV. He was on the McLaughlin group. Like I remember as a kid, I'm a little older than you guys. You're just watching something, and all of a sudden this show pops on, and the McLaughlin guy, like he would yell at everybody. It was like this exciting show, and it even got parodied in SNL. Back when political pundits, I guess, were really cool and on network TV. And yeah, Buchanan's there all the time. Him and Eleanor Cliff, and they're yelling about stuff. But it's like, yeah, he's just a normal guy. He's not being portrayed as a fascist for sure.
Yeah, McLaughlin Group, which I don't know where it started out, but I remember it was on PBS, and we got that channel. And this old man who looks just very confused, and he can't hear anything, so he's going. You know, you have to fluctuate with the volume if you're watching that show. You're going to be going to the remote a lot because he is screaming, and he makes Pat Buchanan look more reasonable because this old guy who's playing his cards close to the vest is so loud that just having the soft-spokenness of Patrick J. Buchanan calms people. His accent is so weird, though. There's not. It's hard to say whether or not there's a Washington D.C. accent. I was born there, and I lived in Northern Virginia as a little kid, and I know Buchanan has bounced back and forth between D.C. and Virginia, and there are times where there's like a bit of a Southern twang to it, but then other times where it sounds more northeastern. He calls it Washington, which I think that is one of the few staples of like, oh, that's what people from DC say. Who are white anyway. That's a DC thing. But he also complains about the Civil War. He says Lincoln went too far. They could have settled it peacefully. And I remember him being interviewed about this. And they're like, well, it worked out in the long run, right? Slavery was bad. And Buchanan is like, well, yeah, but my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather
Mississippi died or something, right?
Yeah, like
who the fuck cares?
Right.
I'm pretty sure that like half my family died in the Civil War. I don't give a fuck. Come on.
They're dead. Yeah, that's an argument.
If they were fighting for the right side, I would not care. It was a million years ago.
Yeah.
It's like telling me like my Neanderthal ancestor got clubbed. I don't give a fuck. Like if you're talking about like my dad, yeah, then I'd be pissed off. But like some guy named like Eustace, who someone told me it was my relative. I don't give a fuck.
Right. It's a bananas take. And it seems like he grows up in this weird household where his dad is just like yelling. He's basically doing McLaughlin Group to his kids, but about how your great-great-great-grandfather died in the Civil War, or Franco's a great man. This was like sports for them.
Having my dick dad like yell at me about things, maybe I'm just built different than Mr. Buchanan, but like, maybe I just would I feel like it would make me take the opposite. I'd be like, my dick dad keeps trying to tell me about my fucking relative who died in the Civil War. I'm going to show him and not care about it at all. But I also think it's like, man, it is nothing that is like a bigger tell of someone who just has like a deep, hateful racism than someone who's like from the North, but is like really wishy-washy and weepy about the South. They're like, oh, they're taking down our monuments. You're like, motherfucker, you are from Minnesota. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's a real giveaway.
There's this guy who maybe we'll have to do at some point, Michael Perutka, who was the Constitution Party nominee in 2004, who is from Maryland and gets triggered whenever anyone says Maryland is not the South. Because he'll be like, there was, Fred, you probably know the exact history.
Oh yeah, I want to say, yeah, they were a slave state. Lincoln didn't let them leave, suspended habeas corpus, so they didn't get to fight in the Civil War. But then they did cross the river and shoot Lincoln because that's where John Wilkes Booth was from. So yeah, to me that makes them honorary Confederates. So yeah, they were part of the South, but they should feel bad for it.
Michael Perutka would agree with you. He's very upset when people call Maryland the North. He's like, no, and he still there's a video where he's like, please rise to the national anthem, and then he starts playing the Confederate national anthem, If I Died in Dixie or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where in Maryland you're talking. Like obviously, if you're talking about like Bethesda, like no. But if you're talking about like, I've been to Western Maryland to like illegal dirt track fucking hoopty races where everybody's drinking underage and their guns and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
there are many faces of Maryland.
It is one of those states like Ohio and Pennsylvania where it is basically every type of America in the same state. Like it's all like a ton of different regions are in Pennsylvania and Ohio as well. But so 1992, Buchanan's very upset with Bush for becoming a foreign policy president. He's mad about the Gulf War, which I think if that had gone a different way, maybe Buchanan's campaign would have gone a different way. If the Gulf War was not a smashing success, which is what we were, how it was presented to basically America, then maybe Buchanan would have done better. But especially among Republicans, maybe not the rest of the country, but Republicans are really amped about this thing, right? This is huge. This is like our first war from Vietnam, and it was over in like 2 days. We kicked Saddam's ass. This is like something to run on, which is kind of why Bush did it ultimately. He orchestrated things sort of masterfully in order to get this foreign policy win, which was, not great because it set the precedent for the second one. But it's also the tax issue. Bush has reneged on his promise for no new taxes, and this really offends Republicans. There was a budget deal cut with the Democratic Congress in 1990, and it did. I mean, there's some details on this. I know you know, Fred, about the.
Yeah, Bush had said, read my lips, no new taxes. It wasn't well thought out, but he wanted to sound like Clint Eastwood at the convention. And then the Democrats have control of the Congress, and they're able to shut the government down in 1990. So he makes a deal, and he does the thing. No Republican will ever do this again. They're not allowed to. This, you might as well say Jesus wasn't real. He raises the top income tax rate from 28% to 31%, an insane increase. How dare you? That you're basically a communist. Like, did you win the Cold War or lose it? And that's the problem. And Buchanan is not going to be happy about that. And Grover Norquist with the tax pledge, like they'll never let them do that again. They even raised capital gains a little bit, so that just makes Bush lose credibility. He did this cool thing to appeal to the conservatives, and now he's lost the credibility. So Pat at least thinks that he's beatable in some way. And we see, if you're watching the visual, they even have a read my lips. They have lips behind Buchanan as he's talking. So it was a big thing of like, we read your lips and we want to get rid of you kind of thing, even though you won that war.
Yeah. But the real
really a distillation of that era's Republicans right down to it. Low taxes, go to war.
Absolutely. And then also the third thing that doesn't get brought up that often, but in John Ganz's book, When the Clock Broke, which before this goes off into a thing about our Twitter addled fans, you can find him annoying. This is not a comment on Ganz's Twitter presence, but his book is very interesting. It does explore Buchanan quite a bit. And he points out that it was really the 1991 Civil Rights Act that animated Buchanan and his circle of clowns. That's really what motivated him to run. There had been a similar bill that was just sort of an update of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which Bush had vetoed. And then the Democrats came back with a different version. They made it very clear that this wouldn't lead to quote-unquote quotas. And Bush felt the pressure to sign it after it passed because David Duke showed up to the Senate to watch the debate in person. And this was horrifying to even a bunch of Republicans at the time. So that won the bill Republican votes, David Duke's presence, because they wanted to distance themselves from him. And then Bush also wants to distance himself from him, so he signs it, and that really offends Pat Buchanan, who says of the 1991 Civil Rights Act, using the totemic term fairness, neo-socialists have effected an immense transfer of wealth from producers to a parasitic government. Elected by small business and middle America, this administration has betrayed both. So definitely a rallying cry for his 92 campaign.
Did this include the Americans with Disabilities, or that's later?
I think it's a separate bill. That one, I feel like even hard right conservatives are like don't want to be publicly opposed to that. I'm sure. I mean, which
that's great.
Is not
Nowadays
to say
they would be like too much ramps, and we have to cancel afford it. Sorry.
Right. Well, I don't want to suggest that like it was an easy thing to pass. Like there was ADAPT and other organizations really fought to get that through, but I feel like that was maybe a little less controversial.
I also want to add, so David Duke ran for the primary also, at least. So Pat Buchanan is not the most Nazi guy in the race because there is a Grand Wizard of the Klan. So
that's he really split the vote for these guys. Pat Buchanan's got to be so annoyed that David Duke jumped in the race. You're drafting off my presence, man.
Yeah.
Wait, there's like no left-leaning in this whole race, because Bill Clinton is the Democrat. He's a centrist. I think there's some maybe left-leaning people in the primary, but this is an insanely right-leaning presidential election.
Yeah, because I mean, the other narrative that you'll hear about the 1992 election is that the Clintons effectively just took all of the Republicans' positions away from them, so that they could they just tacked so hard to the right that Bush didn't have any really way to appeal or to differentiate himself. And so you have that campaign representing the left end of the window here. The one that took away all the conservative positions.
Yeah, man, it was dismally. Jackson really should have run again in 92, or someone like him. And there was, it was kind of assumed that would happen, and it just didn't. And the leftmost person you had was Tom Harkin, who did decently in the primaries, but wasn't going to beat out Clinton, who was really aided by Ross Perot, who was running a less xenophobic campaign from Pat Buchanan's. But Buchanan often throughout the 90s pointed to his ability to pick up the Perot voter, which the stuff he was saying, if you look at the actual economics of it, there's from different ends of the spectrum. Not a lot of people, Perot had some crazy ideas that were not really grounded in much research, but it resonated with people, as did Buchanan, particularly talking about trade, because Reaganomics had been so bad. The proportion, this is from When the Clock Broke, the proportion of Americans making between $18,000 and $55,000 a year shrank by 20% just throughout the 1980s. So there's like a real anger, and there really is no left populist messenger to pick that up. Clinton, he does use he called it a positive populism at the time. He does talk about raising taxes on the rich, and he does end up doing that as president, but it's not to really redistribute. It's just to like pay off the deficit to help the bond markets. But as we mentioned, very anti-NAFTA, which comes about in which is signed in 1993, but that's an issue in the 92 campaign because it's pending. Bush is planning on signing it, and Clinton has an opportunity to take up the opposition in NAFTA and be the anti-NAFTA candidate and really counterpose himself with Bush. But then he kind of says, he's for it. Perot's against it. Perot's not going to win. I may as well just be for it. So he kind of like tables it. But Buchanan is vehemently anti-NAFTA, and that's another thing that really motivates him in 1992.
Yeah, and that's going to help. Yeah, that's going to help Buchanan a lot because he's going to start. The campaign begins. There's no Iowa caucus. It's going to begin in New Hampshire, and the job losses from the factories closing have hit New Hampshire pretty hard already. The problem is later on, and not that NAFTA's been passed already, but yeah, there's just already factories are closing, and NAFTA's going to make it worse. Later on in the primaries, some of the other states haven't been hit yet, and that's going to hurt Buchanan. So he announces his candidacy. He's running against Bush. Because he's not a real Republican. He says the establishment has dominated Congress for 4 decades. It's ossified and out of touch with the American people. There's just a ruling class going on, and I'm going to challenge Bush for the nomination. Then, of course, he says some stuff that's a little more racist. He says, America's in crisis, the rise of nationalism, which I guess he's against, the scourge of drugs, the urgent need to take back our streets from criminals, unfair trade deals, ethnic violence, and political correctness, or as he calls it, the landfill called multiculturalism that threatens future generations. So he's coming, and that's why the biography of him is called it's called The Crusader. So he's on a crusade to take America back, possibly the 1950s, maybe to the 1890s, even to the 12th century when the Catholics dominated all of Christendom. But he is definitely taking you back somewhere that you want to go. Yeah, like they say, like the neocons are neo, and he's like, I'm not neo anything. Everything must go back, and that paleoconservative is good because he does want to take us back to the Stone Age.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say later on, this is in the 2010s. He's interviewed by Sam Sachs on RT, and he asks Pat Buchanan, "Are you on the wrong side of history?" And Pat Buchanan, perhaps unsurprisingly, says, "Yes, I am on the wrong side of history." But that's what conservatives do. We stand on the wrong side of history. I mean, it's like the Buckley quote referenced earlier. They stand athwart history, yelling, "Stop!" So it's kind of weird to just be self-conscious about that. But that's kind of what makes right-wing people tick.
I think he also seems to be like having a completely different understanding of the word wrong in that context. Like he's saying I'm on the losing side of history or something like that. Like the noble, he's almost giving himself like that noble lost cause shit.
Right.
But I think he's failing to understand, or maybe he's willfully misunderstanding, is that they're saying you are morally wrong. we will evolve to a point where we see that you were primitive and regressive and stupid, but he doesn't see that.
No.
Yeah, he's very lost cause. Yeah, Robert E. Lee is one. Robert E. Lee and Franco were two of his heroes. Not a great two. And yeah, he's very specifically anti-gay. And I don't think Reagan or even Bush, they did enough with AIDS. But Reagan at least had some sympathy for gay people. He is from Hollywood. And Pat Buchanan is not having it. He doesn't care about AIDS. He's still going to be anti-gay. He calls the gay rights movement the revolutionary vanguard. So, like, I guess they're the equivalent of Lenin and his men turning us communism. He doesn't like, Ben watching naked in the gay pride parade. A lot of things that you honestly still hear conservatives say today. And he's not going to tolerate AIDS because he's not going to care about AIDS because that would mean condoms and being pro the sexual revolution and sex for pleasure. And he is not, pleasure in general is not good for Pat Buchanan, but definitely not sex for pleasure. He seems like either he doesn't believe the feeling of orgasm exists, or if you have one, you're going to hell. So he is Mr. No Fun with all that.
You know what's interesting is I feel like I and I think a lot of other like middle and younger millennials came up during a time when all this was like not really something that you commonly heard. Like Pat Buchanan was an outlier, I think, for the Republican Party, obviously, given how he performed in elections and things like that. And like now all of this stuff is more back in, these statements, like people feeling comfortable openly say, like, I think it was Pete Hegseth posted a video the other day from a group that says women shouldn't be allowed to work. And it like says it like in the video that he posts, like women shouldn't be allowed to work. And like, he didn't have to step down. He didn't have to tweet. He didn't have to apologize for it at all. It's become mainstreamed again. And I realized that we lived in this very brief window in American politics where those sorts of statements, the anti-gay statements, the anti-woman statements, things like that, were not just commonplace things that people felt comfortable saying. And I thought it was like something we were past. And I realized I think we were just in like this weird moment where people were not saying that shit.
Women
Yeah.
shouldn't have to work is interesting because like these rich guys, like Pat Buchanan's a rich media figure, works in Washington, all that. His wife doesn't need to work. He can afford to live without her working. But anyone below the 1%, both people need to work just to be able to afford stuff. So they're kind of in the little bubble where like if the woman doesn't want to work, she doesn't have to.
Right. It's interesting, too, because Buchanan and his wife don't have kids. And that's something he's asked about and gets very defensive about. Is like he refuses to explain it. It's just like it's a personal decision.
Oh, there's a funny reason. That's what that means. That means there's a funny reason.
Yeah. It could just be he was waiting to be president and they wanted to have a baby in the White House or something. I don't know.
No, you gotta have a kid to go to the White House. The answer is a mutilated penis. This is always the answer.
Okay.
That was for Hitler. Hitler. Yeah.
He's Catholic.
Hitler couldn't. Yeah.
He is Catholic, so sometimes those
cat of nine tails.
Right. I mean, the Jews perfected circumcision. If you're going to do it, do it with a moil. And Catholics are off the. The Catholics don't have a guy who does the circumcisions, so it's very possible that
whoever's around.
Some point, something nasty maybe went down in the 40s in Northwest Washington D.C.
Yeah, I was just going to say Hitler doesn't, his penis didn't work right. He couldn't get an erection or something like that, misshapen penis. So there could be something in common with that too. Or maybe just out of sympathy for Hitler, Pat is living the same life.
Yeah. A fisherman can see another fisherman from afar.
Could be. Yeah. But this is making me think maybe we're on the wrong side of history. Of course, not that we're morally incorrect, but with the way Buchananism has kind of been mainstreamed. But at the time, it does not vanquish George H.W. Bush, doesn't take the nomination from him, which would have been basically impossible. Not physically impossible, but like that wasn't going to happen. I don't think that was his goal. It was just to kind of become a leader in the conservative movement, move things more his way, and also set himself up for 1996. When maybe after 16 years of Republican presidents, where do you go after that, right? What are they going to nominate? Another normal Republican? They would have to nominate a wacko, maybe was his logic. But he does he does surprisingly well in New Hampshire, or at least gets some a response that people weren't expecting. But Bush still wins. He does have to campaign, though, which is kind of embarrassing for the Bush campaign. They don't make it. It doesn't become a debate, which would have been very entertaining if President H.W. Bush had to go up to New Hampshire and like debate Pat Buchanan. That would have been a sight to see. But that doesn't happen. Bush wins over 50% in every county. But he has these little pockets of voters, these sort of pools. And 4 years later, that develops into a win. He wins New Hampshire in 1996, which is a big shock. And he doesn't really know how to deal with it. He like goes like right after he wins and could potentially become the front runner. He goes off to a ranch somewhere and is like riding a horse with a cowboy hat because he doesn't, this wasn't part of the plan really. I mean, deep down, I wonder if he did think he could win or not. But it seems like he's satisfied just for enough people to listen to him spout hot air.
I was wondering, he could have probably become governor of New Hampshire. Like, it's a very New Hampshire-based candidacy. There's not a lot of Jews in New Hampshire. It's all white. They lost a lot of jobs. It's the perfect state for him. Like, I was like, he could be president of New Hampshire, but like he could have been governor of New Hampshire, maybe secede, maybe try to join Canada or form a country with Quebec. Like, that was his destiny. He needed to like locate himself in New Hampshire, but instead he just is happy to get some votes there in 92 and then do a little better in 96.
It's interesting you say that. I've always said that I think Trump, I think it's a very common thing that people say is that Trump would be really funny if he wasn't president. Like if we put him in like some sort of Truman Show scenario where he thought he was president and he thought all these decisions were having weight, but like he wasn't actually impacting the real world. I would even go further. I think he would be a very funny governor. Like, give him a state that I don't care about, like New Hampshire, and let him do whatever mad king shit he wants to do in New Hampshire. People can leave, they can move to Vermont or Massachusetts or whatever. If they don't like it, the republic will continue. And like, I think he still gets that fun executive power that he so craves. He gets to be the king of his little fiefdom and do all of his crazy things where, like, I don't know, fucking shower pressures triple in New Hampshire or something. But I think Buchanan probably would have thrived in the same environment for the same reasons. Like, he has stupid, crazy ideas, but who fucking cares? It's just New Hampshire.
Yeah,
I like this. Yeah. No, I like that we're sending evil people to New Hampshire. That happens to Walter White on Breaking Bad. Like, if you do enough evil, you get exiled to New Hampshire and you have your own little kingdom there.
Very true. I mean, every 4 years, a bunch of evil people go up there. Maybe that'll change next election. But overall, though, he doesn't do so hot. He makes a joke in his RNC speech that he's like, I don't quite remember offhand how many states I won. I'll go back and check at some point. He doesn't win anywhere. Bush wins all 51 contests. He does get, though, 367 delegates and 23% of the overall vote in the Republican primary, which comes out to just under 3 million people are voting for Pat Buchanan to take Bush's place as the nominee. And Bush and the Republican Party as a whole don't really know what to do with him because they don't want to get too close because icky. The middle American still doesn't really like Pat Buchanan at that point. But they also need his base. They need those voters. That's 3 million people. There's even more people out there who think like that. You kind of have to throw them somewhat of a bone. So they do let him speak at the RNC. And this is the thing that Pat Buchanan is probably most famous for, is the culture war speech at the 1992 convention, which is an absolutely bananas thing. I don't know if people have seen this, but it's about a half hour. It's on YouTube. I don't even know if he uses the term culture war, but he definitely invokes culture as the big question in this election is, are we going to go embrace Clinton and Clinton policies? He keeps invoking the fact that there's two Clintons, even though one is
double bad.
Yeah, they were saying, some of them at the time were saying you get 2 for 1. You get Bill and Hillary if you're a Democrat. That should be good. Yeah, but the Republicans are horrified that you have a woman who's this uppity, who has and such a perfect Democrat compromise. She doesn't keep her own name fully. She keeps it and then adds Clinton to it, which was seen as incredibly transgressive. Instead of just keep sticking with her own name, which my own mom did, a lot of women of her generation did, she does add Clinton to it as a compromise, and she also keeps Rodham. But this is despicable to Pat Buchanan, who also waxes on about gay rights, abortion on demand, and he complains about, I mean, it's funny how this is what environmentalism was at this point, or this is how it was portrayed, is like there's all these factories that can't get built or are getting shut down because of insects and owls, and environmentalists who are suing people, kind of like an anti-abundance argument. That's like sort of what he's making in the 92 speech. But do you, Fred, you were old enough to remember watching this. Did you see the Culture War speech live?
So I did watch the 92 convention. Yeah, 92 was weird for me because I was young. I didn't know much. Each convention, I watched it and then was convinced to vote for the candidate. And that actually was a common experience because the polls moved a lot. And it is crazy. Yeah, Pat only gets 23% of the vote, but he gets this amazing speaking slot, as you said, because he's on Monday, he's in prime time, and he's opening for Ronald Reagan, which is really just the dream of anyone. So you're not going to miss Ronald Reagan. I don't even know if Reagan was able to speak in '96. This might have been Ronald Reagan's last big speech of his life.
Yeah.
Not that it was that memorable. And he gets to make the speech, and he's allowed to give them red meat. The way these conventions, conventions post like the 70s, they're scripted. So he had to give his script, but Bush approved a pretty right-wing script. And he's even going to say, which I don't think I really realized at the time how bad it was, but he's going to say, like, everyone else is for anarchy, permissiveness, secularism, perversion, stagnation, and the Clintons. And it's just like all horrible. He says he has a line like, the people in the Democratic convention were really radicals and liberals, and they were dressed up as centrists and moderates. And this is the worst cross-dressing we've ever seen. So he's even going after the trans a little bit, which no one is doing. And yeah, he's declaring war on the culture, and it does help. It seems to help Bush in the polls, but then it also kind of shows Bush up and maybe helps help Clinton seize the middle of the race and have Bush seem a little more extreme.
I know there's that famous Molly Ivins quote about it probably sounded better in the original German. It's crazy to imagine an era where someone accusing a politician of sounding like Hitler moved the needle at all. And two, he looks super Hitlery here. I can see it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The shadow makes it
up. He is just in full Führer mode.
There's a little shadow that makes it look like he has a mustache, like the Hitler mustache.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's great.
There's a weird quirk in the race. So Perot is running when Buchanan is in the primary. And then Perot is running in the debates and he's in the election, like when they vote. But at this point, Perot has dropped out. So there's less of a reason for Buchanan to help Bush by saying, don't vote for Perot, vote for Bush. And even to attack Perot. Because I was like, why is he not attacking Perot? And it's like, well, Perot's dropped out at this point. So it Perot hurts his chances by dropping out, but he also makes it so the Republicans can't bash him at their convention. Because you can't bash a guy who's not in the race. You don't know that he's going to come back.
Right. And something he talks about in the speech is the LA riots, which are the very prominent issue at the time. For those who don't remember or know, there was a black man who was beat by a series of white police officers who then got off. They weren't charged, and there was an uprising in many sections of Los Angeles among black residents. And there's a backlash to that backlash. People like Pat Buchanan are horrified. The National Guard gets sent in, and that's really who he kind of dedicates the speech to, is these young men. I almost call them beautiful young men. That's what Trump would say. But it's kind of a precursor to what we see now with the reaction to quote unquote Democrat-run cities, where now DC, Buchanan's hometown, is being ruled by the military essentially, and that it's funny. It's gross, but it's also kind of funny to have your reaction to the National Guard being sent in is to like sort of romanticize and the National Guard men as if they're like Allied troops marching through Europe, which of course he wouldn't be fond of. But this is kind of embarrassing for the Republican Party because he goes really far. Even Ronald Reagan thinks this is way over the top. He thinks it was too anti-gay, which is funny. Reagan of all people, who apparently Buchanan claims he sent a memo about AIDS when he was working in the White House, and nobody read it. But what he's remembered for really with that is an op-ed he's written when he's in the Reagan administration about how the gay bathhouses need to be shut down because that's where AIDS is being spread. But there's a review from the fellow pundits who say that Buchanan did a great job, which is kind of interesting because, like, again, these are people who don't agree with him on stuff. David Brinkley says it was an astonishingly good speech. Hal Bruno, I've never seen a better first night Sander Van Oker, and in terms of classic raw rhetoric, that was the most skillful attempt to remind the party faithful of the role that ideas have played in American politics since Eugene McCarthy nominated Adlai Stevenson, which is like, again, they're his friends, so they want to see him like do well, even if what he's doing is evil. He's animating some of the worst tendencies in America. But Ted Koppel says Republicans walked out tonight with a sense of optimism, which they hadn't had in a few months. So, like, the media is spinning this as like, great speech, Pat, you did it. But he's kind of legitimizing a lot of things that we will see coming to the fore in the future, in the next couple decades after this.
Yeah, it's terrible. The media, the media, legitimizing it. The media's just like, well, he sounded good. He worked in the room. Then he does get hurt because then the Team Bush and a lot of the mainstream Republicans try to play it down, and then they kind of start to spin against the speech, and that's kind of how it was remembered. But it does seem like the night of, it was received pretty favorably.
Yeah. Well, we like to close out with kind of imagining what would have happened if the subject, in this case, Pat Buchanan, somehow became president. I'm not sure when that would have happened, but I think probably his best shot was in '92. It's hard. I guess Bush would have, again, the Gulf War. Yeah, if the Gulf War went differently, maybe Bush would be less popular.
Well, if I remember correctly, didn't Buchanan at one point advocate for a $12 million federal budget?
Wow.
I think that was like one of his crazier proposals.
Like the 12 tribes of Israel. Yeah, 1 million for each tribe. Yeah, it's very
I'm going to double check this because it sounds, even as I say it, I'm like, we want to just cut this.
It could be 12 billion. I remember something with 12, but yeah.
Even though there has been a lot of inflation, but I still think it was probably 12 billion even at that
12
time.
12 billion maybe, but even still, something insane. Something like, so, I mean, fucking Doge. I think it would be funny. I mean, like, one of the ultimate like fantasies you kind of have is like, it would be nice to see these like conservatives, particularly like libertarians in particular, get the world they want, and then realize that the world they've been trying to build is fucking terrible, like in particular libertarians and paleoconservatives. But then we all have to suffer for them to come to that realization, and that's too much of a sacrifice. But it would be so funny just to watch like them finally, the dog catch the car, and just watch them all realize that actually society is mostly good.
One thing that Buchanan is he could have cut funding because he is willing to demolish the American empire. He wants to go isolationist again. So he's not one of these guys who says, like, cut the government, but not the military. So he is willing to at least cut spending there, which is kind of his one redeeming thing. He has a little bit in common with maybe Ron Paul in that way.
Right. And he is one of the few people who will actually self-identify as an isolationist and as a protectionist. Most politicians don't say they are those things. In the 90s, that would have really changed because of the trajectory of the country was, more globalization, open markets, etc., international cooperation. Soviet Union's gone, but that would not have been Buchanan's MO. He definitely would have pulled back from Somalia, which was like an early Clinton thing, which Black Hawk Down wouldn't have happened for better or worse. I could see people getting mad, even more mad at him for Rwanda. But does that actually like translate to votes? Maybe not. But I think they're probably, to get elected, he would have needed a recession, I think, to happen during the primary. And then if he's elected, the recession is not going to get much better because his solution for economics is what Trump is trying now, tariffs. And maybe it's a little more successful in the early 90s before you've offshored absolutely everything. But that on its own, if that's the only government intervention you're going to do, that's not enough to stimulate economic growth. That's just going to like send prices up. So I think he would have been a very unpopular president who probably wouldn't have gotten his stuff passed. And then, yeah, we just got through AIDS. I mean, AIDS is still going on, I should say, when Clinton takes office. So there would have been a pretty intense protest among against President Buchanan. I mean, we can see. You look back at photos. There's protesters, protesting most of his appearances and speeches and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Krang, do you have any thoughts on President Buchanan? What the world would be like?
I mean, I think that, obviously the protectionist thing would have changed. I was a toddler at the time, but my understanding of, the shifts that were happening around that time, the seismic shifts were happening around NAFTA. And just generally, as you mentioned, like offshoring a lot of things and opening up a lot of new trade routes and things like that. And I think about how much of just like not even just our politics, but our actual tactile lives, like what we actually did in our lives was based on this kind of burgeoning globalism, internationalism, the internet, everything like that. And I wonder how that process might have been stymied. Like, would we even have gotten the internet at this pace that we got it, or the speed that we got it? Like, I don't know enough about like sourcing anything of like computer parts and stuff like that, but I have to imagine that it would have at least delayed a lot of our technological advances that happened in the 90s that we kind of take for granted because it's just the basis of the world we live in now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. A world without as prominent of an internet, because that was like a huge. I remember in third grade when Earthlink was still around. My teacher, she had us like hold yarn. We had a big circle, and all the kids held yarn across the circle from one another, and this was like a metaphor for the internet. So
we should still make kids do that.
They should really know what it is.
Understand their heritage.
Yeah. I mean, it is funny how now it's like the consensus for most people is that the internet and screens are destroying the youth. But at the time, in the 90s, it was like, this is a wonderful thing. Clinton in 96 campaigned on the goal of having every third grader be able to access the internet by 2001, which is like, no, stop. I mean, that's something Buchanan would have done positively. Is you would have not had.
This is what I'm talking about with the butterfly theory, man.
Yeah.
You never know. Just do whatever. It
Right.
could have turned out that the proto right wing nationalist was all we needed to save us from the specter of the internet.
Yeah.
I want to say a little more on the Trump thing. Yeah, I don't think Buchanan is fully Trump. I think Trump is Buchanan plus Perot, because Perot has the money. And then plus this other thing that is very important in a Republican primary, he fucked a lot of hot women, okay? Perot and Buchanan are completely sexless. So you got to be rich, you got to care about their jobs or whatever, and then stick it to the establishment and fuck hot women. And that is one thing they're missing. I guess there's a chance that we'd be better off if Buchanan was president in '92, because maybe he doesn't do NAFTA, he doesn't do some of the Clinton stuff, and he sort of would have had to bend over backwards. Like, I'm worried about the whole because he hates Jews, but it almost seemed like he'd be so protested by Jews, and he doesn't have Fox News yet, which kind of insulates you a little bit from all kinds of protests. He would almost have to bend over backwards to the Jews. So that would be kind of nice as a young Jew at that time. I guess it is scary. I might sabotage the Israeli peace yeah, it's all weird, actually. Yeah. It's interesting what he would have done with the peace process, because he's harder on Israel. Yeah, there's a chance, actually, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, no NAFTA, peace in the Middle East. We delay the internet till our brains fully form. Yeah, it would be a lot better. So yeah, if only Pat had won.
Just do whatever. You never know what happens. And then also, I was Buchanan has like this, we didn't even really touch on this. He has this whole other side to him. Like, I remember I read that him and his wife's first date, they killed a bottle of bourbon in a motel room with Hunter S. Thompson on their first date. Him and his wife's first date. And like, just trying to reverse engineer how that scenario could have happened. Like, this is your first date with a woman. She's like, oh, and this like also he's 100, so like it's like the doo-wop era or some shit, and you're like, all right, what are we gonna do? We're gonna go to a motel and drink on full fifth of bourbon with this sexual deviant over here. By the way, I'm very Catholic. Like, what? He has a whole other side.
Yeah, he and Thompson were good. Were drinking buddies. They would get slosh and just argue and rail against each other. Which, yeah, he doesn't. He didn't really doesn't really practice what he preaches with the family and all this other stuff. Like he doesn't have a family, doesn't have kids. Is getting drunk in motels with Hunter S. Thompson. Like maybe there's a whole other side we don't even like a third side we don't even know about. But that is a good first date, though. I will say, if I was a young woman, you would sweep me off my feet. Anyone who could.
Wedding speech.
Yeah. But yeah, on the Trump thing. So this gets brought up a lot. Is that as we'll get to, and we're going to do a part 2 with the '96 election and the 2000 election. Me and Fred with when he ran as the Reform candidate, he got the nomination in 2000, but he had a primary challenge from one Donald J. Trump, who in 2000 or 99 was bringing up all of the racist, terrible stuff Pat Buchanan has said, compared him to David Duke, and that it gets brought up when this comparison comes up. But in 2015, before Trump took the plunge to run for president, he called Pat Buchanan to apologize, which is basically unheard of Trump doing that to like, I can't think of another example. I think to Megyn Kelly, he said, "Excuse me," about some of his old tweets. So he definitely was conscious of the Buchanan lane. Donald Trump was. So I think there's definitely something here. I think he watched Buchanan and tried to steal his thunder in 2000. There's some, parlor politics we're probably never going to be privy to there. But ultimately, he was kind of aping his style, but he had a better way of, in his own strange, bizarre, entirely unique and evil way, he had a better way of connecting with people than Pat Buchanan was ever going to have. And I think some of that does have to do with Trump not being an intellectual and Buchanan being one.
Trump certainly. I think that is the biggest chasm between the two of them is probably how many books they've read.
Yeah,
I think Buchanan has written more books than Trump has ever read.
Oh, definitely. Art of the Deal. I wonder if Buchanan's read that. Krang, thank you for joining us and exploring this evil and fascinating man, in my opinion.
Thank you for having a guest who knows way less about the topic than both of you. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, I mean, you specialize in right-wing ghouls. If anyone has seen Krang's Twitter page or X page, I should say.
Don't you dare.
I know I slipped up. I don't know why I said X, but that's what Pat Buchanan is technically on, X. I really am curious about who runs this thing. I think it's maybe he must have some staffer who takes care of his bullshit.
And so the last tweet is in 2022. And if you go to the website, that's the last post. And so he clearly gave up on his blog 3 years ago. Everything he had to say, he felt he had blogged.
Yeah, the last
have an heir, yeah.
That's true. Yeah, he doesn't have a daughter or son who can take up this crazy mantle.
The reins of the family.
He's truly like a medieval pope. Yeah, he wanted to run Christendom and then just let them vote on who's next because I don't have an heir.
It does look like a significant amount of his blog posts have Ben Garrison cartoons introing them. Or just like there's one that's just a picture of a dragon above Biden commits U.S. to war for Taiwan. So go figure.
How did that one go?
Yeah, I mean it's not too late for Trump to do it. I mean that is oddly, hey, I'd prefer to not have tensions with China over Taiwan. So that is
yes, to our Chinese listeners. We are big fans. No war. Thank you.
No, yeah, that is one area where, hey, Buchanan is probably on the correct side of history, if not about all these other foreign policy ideas. But Krang, thank you again for joining us. Where can people find you? Anything you would like to plug?
Oh, absolutely not. And they can find me on Twitter. That's it.
Or check him out, and check out our Patreon, where we dive in even deeper. We will have part 2 of this coming out soon. So for all of our Reform Party heads, we got some fireworks, and the 96 campaign, I think, as we mentioned, he actually does somewhat okay. He does much better than in 1992. So perhaps that's the closest he gets to winning. We will explore that more.
He's going to beat the pants off of Steve Forbes. Yeah. At our Orange Freddie Journal platforms. Yeah. We've already done Steve Forbes. We're going to do Pat Buchanan. Then we're going to do the only man who could beat Pat Buchanan in 86, Mr. Bob Dole. So
that's right. All right, he's vanquished. Thank you for watching this episode of The Vanquished. If you enjoy our YouTube content, please subscribe to our video tier on Patreon. That is patreon.com/thevanquished. Patreon.com/thevanquished.